this price cap is set according to the European wholesale gas price. It takes no account of the fact that the renewables, the low-cost renewables, wind and solar, which we are producing more of and which now supply through the year about 45% of total electricity, they're not accounted for. Everything is priced against gas, and that is unfair. It is corporate welfare to those people. I also think, listening to her, I thought that she was mistaking the costs of nuclear. Nuclear is not going to be cheap. The new Sizewell plant is going to cost $50 billion.
Nick Butler's an energy analyst and former senior executive at BP, a former advisor to Gordon Brown, and visiting professor at King's College London. Nick, good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to speak to you. I think let's start with the argument there from the Energy Secretary about the need for clean energy to bring down costs for everyone, really. Do you agree that that is a sensible and pragmatic way forward?
It sounds pragmatic and it sounds sensible, but it isn't reflected in the facts. First of all, the increase today, which is very bad news for consumers and for businesses, and which I think will be followed by another increase at the next time this comes up, is driven by the fact that we price that energy entirely in relation to the European gas market, when in fact the renewables that we've been building up over the years are much cheaper and are not reflected in that final price. The owners of those renewables get a windfall profit because of this increase, and consumers pay. And I think this is why the whole argument for net zero is being lost. And I hope the new Energy Secretary will take a hard look at the economics. If she thinks low carbon is beneficial in terms of costs, that should be seen through to the consumer, and it's not being.
Why is it not being seen through to the consumer then? We've been talking a bit this morning about how integrated in some ways the energy market is, that the gas price affects the electricity price. And I suppose, again, to lean on the Energy Secretary's argument, more renewables equals less impact of gas on prices. So just explain why this isn't filtering through to consumers today.
Right. This price cap is set according to the European wholesale gas price. It takes no account of the fact that the renewables, the low-cost renewables, wind and solar, which we are producing more of and which now supply through the year about 45% of total electricity, they're not accounted for. Everything is priced against gas, and that is unfair. It is corporate welfare to those people. I also think, listening to her, I thought that she was mistaking the costs of nuclear. Nuclear is not going to be cheap. The new Sizewell plant is going to cost $50 billion, and that will, according to the current plans, which I hope she will change, will be put on people's bills as soon as construction begins. So I think there's a touch of either misunderstanding or smoke and mirrors here. Energy should be priced according to its cost, and I think that in some cases that would bring prices down, but she cannot pretend that going for new nuclear is going to be cheap.
So, but with all of that in mind, how easy is it for the government simply to make that decision, to say this is now how we are pricing energy? That's not necessarily, they'll be constrained by how the market functions and operates.
Well, she was hinting at this yesterday in an interview she gave that I think is in the paper today. You can reassess how this cap is set. People have been arguing this for many years, and Ofgem, the regulator, in whom many people have very little confidence now, I think Ofgem has stuck rigidly to this reliance on gas as the guiding price. I think she can change the instructions to Ofgem, which is a government agency. That would be quite easy. But then I think she needs to also step back, look at whether all this is succeeding, look at the costs for her constituents in Peckham, I think they think they're paying too much for their energy, and it's not justified because they're not benefiting from any move to low carbon.
So we have to consider then this analysis today that's reported in the Times from Civitas, the think tank, that says that Britain's made some of the fastest progress in decarbonising its electricity system, but still faces high cost, the highest industrial power prices for more than a decade indeed. But the other part of this is around, I suppose, the rush to net zero, the pursuit of net zero. BP were big drivers of the green agenda. In the early 2000s, there was the Beyond Petroleum campaign. That was when you were there. Was that a mistake in hindsight?
I think we were ahead of our time. I don't think it was a mistake at all, and we never pretended that it would be an overnight shift. The energy transition is gradual. We live in an economy that is embedded in the use of hydrocarbons, from aircraft to transport to home heating. Changing that is costly. It means people putting in whole new systems, people electrifying the railways, for instance, which are still only 50% electrified in Britain. All sorts of other changes have to come. They can't come overnight because of the cost, but I think it is a reasonable medium and long-term activity. When I was in BP, we used to think in terms of decades rather than years. And I think by the middle of the century, we will be predominantly using low carbon sources.
Yeah.
But we can't pretend that's overnight, and we should never pretend. I hope the new Energy Secretary understands this, should never pretend that it's going to be cost-free.
Yeah. You say you were ahead of your time. Last month it was reported that BP it was described thus: BP has revealed a fresh £750 million hit from its botched net zero strategy. It had to write down the value of its low carbon and energy transition division by $1 billion on top of a $5 billion write down from earlier in the year. Is it right to say that you were ahead of your time?
Well, the changes that led to that write-down were made long after I had left BP.
Yeah.
At a period when I think BP got a bit of religion about being net zero and wanted to lead the world. I've always thought this was a gradual process. That's how we began it. I think we began it and we weren't quite clear enough on the fact that it was such a long-term process, so that was our problem and our mistake. But I think after that, one generation in BP really pushed it on and said they were going to cut out oil and gas altogether. That is just not realistic. And then they made mistakes on what they invested in. But that's history now, and I think they're trying to correct that. We need a balanced energy economy, and we need, I think, to focus our public and private money on investing in the science that can provide low-cost, low-carbon solutions, because climate change won't be solved by what happens in the UK. It's a global problem, and we need to find affordable ways of moving to low carbon, which can be taken up by countries that are far poorer than us.
Yeah, countries that are far poorer than us, and it's the international comparisons as well that are stark, I think, this morning on all of this. Can I also ask you, while we're speaking, Nick, about the threat that seems to be real, actually, from Iran, and reporting recently of Iran knocking out actually a power plant for 4 days. It shut down this small power plant. First of all, your reaction to that. Second of all, how can we secure our power plants to ensure that sort of thing can't happen?
It's very difficult to secure everything. And I think what that war, and indeed the war around Ukraine, is showing is that conflict and warfare have moved into a new stage. It's not just won or lost by big bombing campaigns. It is now a war of skills, including cyber skills, to attack infrastructure. I think our infrastructure is vulnerable. You can try and protect it. You have to double it up. You have to have immediate backup, for instance, around our power stations and our transport systems and the tube in London and so on, because they could all be attacked by people who can get into the systems, and we have not built those systems in the past with this fear in mind. They have been, and I think it's now being gradually corrected. They're quite open, and skillful people with state backing, as in Iran, as in Russia, as in China, even potentially, could get inside them, and they could take your station off the air. You see that happening in different places around the world. They could close down power plants, and they could make life very difficult. And this is the new conflict. This is new warfare, and we have to prepare as much as we can in the key infrastructure areas that could be targeted.
Nick, it's really interesting speaking to you this morning. Thank you very much.
A pleasure.
Thank you. That's Nick Butler, energy analyst, formerly of BP and formerly an advisor to Gordon Brown.